It's an enormous privilege to be standing here and remembering Mr. Shankaran. Uh, every time I came to Hyderabad during the last decade or more of his life, there was nowhere else I could stay except with Mr. Shankaran. Um, and each time I was inspired. Um I learned so much about many things uh, about what the state must do, or what is a good society. But I think also uh, leading a morally uh, almost impeccable life, what does it take? Uh, I was thinking, what should I speak in 10 or 15 minutes, and there's so many stories to relate. So let me start, and at some point you can tell me to stop. Uh, S.R. Shankaran, as a civil servant, is remembered. I mean, he left an indelible imprint of uh, of what the state must do for its most marginalized people. The whole battle against bonded labor, for instance, was actually initiated and conceptualized, the laws, uh, by Mr. Shankaran and his other, very dear friend who treated him like a father, like many of us did, Mr. Ugandar. The laws on bonded labor, for instance, uh, and so much else. There's a story when I think Chenna Reddy was chief minister, and during a cabinet meeting in which the secretaries were sitting, he said, "There's this really troublesome officer who goes from village to village, sits under a tree, gathers people, and tells them about their rights and about uh, you know bondage and so on and so forth." And he spoke very disparagingly. And Mr. Shankaran was telling me, "Yes, this is exactly what I do. I go from village to village. I sit under a tree, I gather people, and I speak about their rights. And I encourage them to fight for their rights through the process of organization and the law." That became a point at which he said he got up and uh, went on long leave and said, "I'm not going to be part of this government." And he didn't know what was going to happen. And far away in Tripura, there was a chief minister very similar to him. He was also a bachelor who lived in a single room, lived very simply, and and had a deep heart for the most disadvantaged. And he invited him to come as chief secretary to Tripura. Uh, there was, for 7 years, these two men, both, as I said, bachelors, lived in single rooms in the circuit house, used to wash their own clothes. And they demonstrated together what a government which is truly committed to the values of the Constitution can actually accomplish. And and there were, his work was legendary in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, but also in Tripura. Another story I wanted to tell was when he first, I think, leapt into national headlines when the Naxalites kidnapped a set of officers, including Mr. S. Shankaran. And the other officers who were there tell me the story that through the period of their custody, there was only one plea that Mr. Shankaran kept making to the Maoists. They said, "If you have to kill somebody, please kill me. Don't kill any of the other officers. They're married, they have families. I'm a single person." kill me first. Another story. Uh, there was some land dispute in his family, and he went to the village, and they had to deal with the patwari, they had to deal with the tehsildar, and they went through all kinds of upheavals. He never once mentioned that he was an IAS officer. He said, I'm an IAS officer for my official responsibility. Here I've come as an ordinary citizen. And he went through all the rough and tumble that was required for this, the resolution of his whatever legal tangle he had. I put these, some of these stories out to underline that in Mr. Shankaran we had somebody, and he would cringe if I use this word, but I cannot stop myself. Somebody who was saintly in a very fundamental moral sense. He was a man of deep ethical of a bent. And why, in recent years we've seen the state and the civil service to which he was, he had great faith in. I can talk of many things. I was, our batch in the IAS had a reunion in the academy, and the director went on and on about Amrit Kal, and I'm teaching officers to press a button here and something else will happen here and something else will happen here. And after about 2 hours of it, I just couldn't stop myself. I put my hand up and I said, there are 3 things that I look for in a civil servant. One of them is moral courage. The second is financial integrity. And the third is compassion. Nothing of what you've told me speaks to any of those values, which I think Mr. Shanker embodied in its finest. I told the collector, I told the director that, I've been going around the country, and one of the newest outrages is this business about the bulldozer. That this government decides, and majoritarian groups set off violence, some violence breaks out, people dance in front of the mosque, etc., throw stones. And a day later, the government comes up with a list that we hold these 20 people responsible and we're going to demolish their homes. And then they demolish their homes. Now, it represents to me, there's no law in this country that first says you can demolish the home of somebody who's committed a crime. But secondly, somebody who's committed a crime, you have to prove it through a whole process. You file an FIR, you investigate, you file a charge sheet, there's a trial in the court, go to the High Court, you go to the Supreme Court, etc., etc. And finally, and here you're just decided in a day. So I told the director, I'm looking for one district magistrate across this country who refused, who said, I will not push that bulldozer because it's against the constitution. I haven't been able to find that character. So the decline, as we see the civil service having collapsed completely in its moral courage, its compassion, its integrity. The more the decline, the more we look back to Mr. S.R. Shanker, who represented these qualities at their finest. When I quit the IAS as Mr. Shanker was extremely unhappy. He told me, Harsh, I want you to stay within government and fight these battles. It's a matter of great solace to me that towards the end of his life, he told me, Harsh, I revised my opinion. I think you did the right thing. you're fighting battles now which you could never have fought within government. It was, I'll just talk about some of the things that happened in those years when I used to sit and sleep at Mr. Shanker's house. The whole idea of the Safai Karmchari Andolan actually happened in that room. Mr. Shanker was there, Biswara Wilson was there, and I was there, and this whole, one of the most significant battles for Dalit equity that we've seen in this country was conceptualized in that room. And the other is something that I think Professor Hargopal is going to talk about more. Mr. Shankaran was deeply disturbed by the so-called encounter killings of so-called Maoists, and which we're seeing, completely at full steam ahead in Bastar now. And my very beloved friend here, Bela Bhatia, is one of those who's at the forefront of fighting that. But Mr. Shankaran said, I also want to talk to the Maoists about their resort to violence. And he started this Concerned Citizens Committee, where he spoke to both. He spoke to the state on the one hand, and he spoke to the Maoists on the other. And he was that rare person to whom both would listen. I mean, he had the moral authority for the Home Secretary to sit on one side and the leaders of the Maoists to sit on another, and to talk about how violence must be, both sides must give up violence. And it was an exercise again in moral authority that we have very few examples of in free India. So this is the man we are remembering and honoring today. And as our country and as our world slips deeper and deeper into a darkness of hate, of authoritarianism, of the celebration of violence, of prejudice, of massive growing inequality, we need to remember S.R. Shankaran, because he believed in the good state of which he was part of, and he demonstrated what a good state is. And so I'm both honored and privileged and truly humbled to stand here and remember Mr. S.R. Shankaran.